Hi, my name is Dick Fencl, and I've been a member here at St. John's for about 32 years. It's a long time. I am a industrial itinerant. I follow jobs around wherever they seem to go, and have moved several times. I'm going to tell you this morning about how I got to St. John's and why I got to St. John's. So my story, my church story, begins back in Chicago. And this is about the time that the last dinosaurs were seen drinking out of the Chicago River. By the way, there's a theory that says that's why they went extinct. They drank out of the Chicago River, but I digress. Let me talk about my church home. My parents lived on the west side of Chicago, and they sent me to a local nearby church. It was a rather small denomination. Later it got merged into the United Methodist Church, but it was not a family activity. I think they sent me there to get me out of the house on Sunday mornings or Saturday afternoons or whatever happened to happen. And I did the whole bit there. I did the youth group, I did the Sunday school, I did the high school fellowship, and I even took communion lessons. And that was interesting. There was a little nick in my family history. My dad had to work on Saturday mornings. So every Saturday morning, he would drive me, again to get me out of the house, over to where he worked, which was very close to the Museum of Natural History and the Field Museum, and also the Museum of Science and History. And he would drop me off in the morning, and then he would go do his thing, and then he'd pick me up around noon, and we'd go back home. Well, when I started taking confirmation classes, I was puzzled by some of the things that Dr. Reverend Newman talked about, and I asked questions like, what do you mean the earth was created in 6 days? That's not what they said in the museum I was at. Or, are you sure Mary didn't have any contact with a man before she had a baby? Or what about this flood thing? I don't remember seeing anything in any of the museums about that. Well, bless his heart, Reverend Newman told me basically, shut up, sit down, be quiet, and have faith. That really didn't make any sense to me. So when my parents moved, when I was a senior in high school, out to a far out suburb of Chicago, I used that as a good reason for not to go to church anymore. Well, a little later on I went to college, and I had to fill out a form as I applied for Naval ROTC, and I had to check where I was religion-wise. What is your faith, they said. And I was given three choices: Catholic, Jewish, or Protestant. Well, I thought to myself, Dick, you're kind of doing some informal protesting, and that's what Protestant comes from. It's protestant. So that's what I checked. It also said there's a line after it. So the person you're supposed to fill something out, I didn't. No one ever checked on me. No one ever asked me what should have gone in that little line. Even later on, when I applied for security clearance, I did the same thing. No one ever checked. So I was home free. I don't think anybody looked at it, to tell the truth. Anyway, I graduated from college. I got married, went in the Navy, got out, went to grad school at Berkeley, and started working for real in Sacramento, California. When our first child arrived, my wife and I decided that we would kind of send Laura and do with her what they did to me and get her out of the house on Sunday mornings. But we thought we'd check out the church first. Bad mistake. It was Ford Lewis at the First Unitarian Church of Sacramento. One sermon, I was hooked. I went back again and again, and I found out there was a name for people like me. They call me secular humanists. Who would have known I had a name? But anyway, I was hooked, and I kept on going and got active. I joined the church, but just about that time, my employer told me that I was needed someplace else. So I moved to St. Louis. I didn't have much time to get the family ready, my household and all that, and I probably was the only person, I think I belong in the Guinness Book of Records for this. I was the only person who ever lost money selling a house in California. But that's again, that's my story of my life. We looked around in California, or in St. Louis, and I lived on the north side of the city, and Alton, Illinois was close to us, so I started attending to the Alton Unitarian Church, the First Unitarian Church of Alton. And Hugh Kennedy was the minister there, and I found out, by golly, he was as good as Ford Lewis. And so I stayed. I joined and became active and got on the pledge campaign and solicited membership and things like that. But then I left to join a fellowship. We tried to start a fellowship in our area. And I stayed with that for a long time, actually until I got moved again. Unfortunately, the fellowship failed after I had left, not because of anything I did particularly, but it just kind of never did really get started. So I got moved to Augusta, Georgia. There was no choice in Augusta, Georgia. The First Unitarian Church of Augusta was the only church that would accept somebody like me and my spouse. And so we joined, and I became active, and did the usual things of being this and that and the other thing of various committees and working on it. And it was a great place for us to get friends and meet with fellow progressives, and for a Yankee to find a home. I mean, that was really something back in those days. So then I was moved to Cincinnati, and there were 4 Unitarian churches to choose from, not just one. I mean, wow, what a plethora of opportunity. So I was here with a new spouse, a new family, and we decided a new beginning. So we started looking, and we investigated all the 4 churches, and we found this one and started attending. And we found what? We found a minister who made sense, who talked reasonably. There was a youth group that got our children involved. As a new family, we blended together. And, we had a beautiful building to go to. And I like architecture, so this was a natural fit. It didn't hurt that the minister at that time and the subsequent ministers were all caring, loving, knowledgeable people. So we just kind of stayed. And over time, I've become active and have done things like served on the board and the Building and Grounds Committee for a while, and did various committees, the Endowment Fund and things like that. So I've been here, it's been my home, and we have been a community moving together. Now, while I have the mic and your attention, if you're still there, I would like to say one thing, and that is that I've been doing a lot of work as a volunteer since I retired, and one of my early mentors in that told me, you've got to do well to do good in this society. And this church does a lot of good, and it's time for us to do well. So I really think that you have to recognize that the utility bills and the payroll and some of these other things don't pay themselves. We've got to dig in and pledge, so when Joetta comes around and talks to you about pledging, please think about that. Help this church do good in the future. Thank you very much.